From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Positively Kansas.
It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, a Kansas-based disaster relief organization reaches a major milestone with survivors from across the country joining the celebration. Plus, a long-lost box of photos sparks a nationwide mystery. And you think you know sports? We'll reveal a long-standing tradition you may have overlooked. Then we take a deep dive into the oil boom that shaped a thriving Sedgwick County town. I'm Sierra Scott. Half hour of information and inspiration starts right now on Positively Kansas. A Kansas powerhouse of compassion is lighting up the nation. In 2025, faith-based Mennonite Disaster Service celebrated a landmark birthday, marking decades of life-changing work in disaster relief. Volunteers from every corner of the country converged on Wichita to honor an organization that's been a beacon of hope during the worst of nature's fury. Anthony Powell has the story.
What better way to spend a cold February day than to celebrate an organization that has warmed the hearts of millions of people devastated by Mother Nature?
You're basically seeing a family picnic. These are folks that may have not seen each other, volunteers that may not have seen each other for a year or 2 years, that, they're retelling stories of Selma, Alabama, or Moss Point, Mississippi, or working in Bastrop, Texas fires.
Wichita's Ridgepoint Church hosted the 75th anniversary of Mennonite Disaster Service. Scores of MDS volunteers and staff from around the country came to Kansas for the event. After all, the Sunflower State is where MDS began. Back in 1950, at a Heston Sunday School picnic, a group of folks started discussing how they could come together and help out in times of trouble.
The Wichita River is flooding and we have fires. Why don't we organize in these times? So in those early beginning days of 1950, they organized and they initially called themselves Mennonite Service Organization, then changing their name to Mennonite Disaster Service.
The organization steadily grew to nearby states and eventually around the U.S. and into Canada. Today, nearly 10,000 MDS volunteers swing into action whenever and wherever disaster strikes. From the California wildfires to hurricane-stricken North Carolina and countless other places.
For as Mennonites, we take the Sermon on the Mount literally, and that is to help our neighbor in need. And so our neighbor might be the house that burnt across the street, or the house that flooded in western North Carolina, or the fire. And so we put the gospel in action. In fact, we say this is a way to put our faith into action.
Everywhere.
That's how MDS volunteer Jeff Kohler of Mound Ridge, Kansas, describes the places he's been to help out. From Hurricane Maria pummeling Puerto Rico, to Hurricane Sandy slamming into America's East Coast. Kohler has seen a lot in his 50 years with MDS. Sometimes he hasn't had to travel far. Back in May of 2007, Jeff Kohler joined numerous other MDS volunteers in tornado-ravaged Greensburg, Kansas. Together, they helped make sure that a vital part of the town's economy was preserved. And thanks to their countless hours of tough manual labor, crops were saved and farmers were left speechless.
Mostly tears, and they were just kind of dumbfounded that people would come and do this. Why do you do this?
That's easy, say MDS volunteers and staff. There's nothing more rewarding, more enriching than helping those in need. Like this story of a man who lost everything in the California fires. When MDS volunteers first approached him, he was so depressed he could barely move. But when he saw all the help strangers were willing to give, he came alive.
He said, I could have came here and I can only work an hour or two and I ran out of energy. Now that you're here, I can work all day.
So from humble beginnings in Heston, Kansas way back in 1950 to the nationwide organization it is today, Mennonite Disaster Service has always been there and promises to be for many more years to come. In Wichita, I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
Since 2005, more than 90,000 volunteers have given 600,000 days of service to help those devastated by disaster. A box hidden away for decades yields clues to a time that is long past and countless mysteries that beg to be solved. Jim Grayway explains.
They are moments frozen in time, and they contain history living that day with such particularity, so many details.
Whether it's the boys at the barber shop, the guys and gals at the soda fountain, or any of these other faces and places, photographs are a window to the past.
It's so richly preserved in those pictures. And almost nowhere else, this kind of stuff. The interiors of drugstores, the products on sale, the advertising, the women's fashions, and all the men in suits and loud ties. No, it's living history.
Charlie Custer marvels at this collection of pictures his father took in 1950.
The dress was so much more formal, everyone. Just lots of things like that. So very exotic and yet at the same time so familiar and so extraordinarily American.
Taken, he believes, at stops along the iconic Route 66 highway, these photos say so much, yet leave so many questions unanswered.
Very often they spark your imagination. You wonder about relationships, you see what some people are thinking.
Who are these people? Well, in most cases, if not all, we'll never know. These children would now be in their 70s. This vibrant, strapping 20-something would now be in his 90s. Everybody else, forget about it. They're long gone, and for the most part, probably long forgotten. These photos are all that's left.
I think they're just extraordinary documentation of a life that just doesn't exist anymore.
We do know about these two, though. In 1950, Charles and Irene Custer were married at Charles' parents' home in Waukene, Kansas. From there, Charles packed up his big Agfa box camera, and the newlyweds embarked upon a working honeymoon. Charles using the skills he had recently learned from a street photographer in Topeka.
My parents would find a small town, storming into each storefront, saying, "Hollywood's calling, ma'am, your back's pretty, but your face is prettier. Smile for the cameras, the newspapers want to know." And they'd shoot one shot, that's all they got. They would then go back to their motel. They'd have, let's say, 30 of these pictures or more every day. And they would develop them in the bathroom sink that night. And then they'd just go back down the main street the next morning and say, "Well, the newspaper didn't want these pictures, but they're so nice, we thought you folks might like a few copies for your employees and friends." And they would sell them for, I think, $1 a piece. And they would take orders, make contact prints for each store that wanted them, and return a third morning, pass them out, collect their money, and drive on to the next town.
The Custers had not bothered to keep track of who was in any of the photos or where they were taken. The pictures didn't seem to be of any value once the couple had moved on to the next town. Finally, after 2 years of traveling and taking photos, the Custers decided to settle down in Chicago and raise a family. Charles became a lawyer, and he and Irene also opened a TV sales and repair shop.
And of all those photographs, my dad randomly set aside one box of negatives, thinking, someone might find it interesting someday. And my wife pulled it out of the closet as we were packing him out of the family home where we lived, where they had stayed for the past 47 years. And he said, "Well, sure, if you want that, take it." And friends of ours saw that on my bookshelf years later out here in California. And they are very serious photographers. They were thrilled to see ancient history, and they are responsible for bringing all these pictures back to life.
Those friends have posted all the photos online and are hoping that people can identify some of these faces and places. After 70 years, it may be a long shot, but wait much longer and there probably won't be anybody left who has any idea, though the photos do offer some clues.
Here and there were calendars in the background that gave the name of a town, that sort of thing. So I was able to put together, clearly they were in Oklahoma and New Mexico anyway, and apparently Arizona too. And that's Old 66.
The famous old road has long been eclipsed by interstate highways, now as obsolete as this washing machine.
What a different world.
Irene passed away in 2011, Charles in 2020. As time marches on around us in these pictures, it's frozen forever in 1950. The faces and places may remain a mystery, but the ways of life from that time are much less mysterious thanks to these remarkable windows to history. For Positively Kansas, I'm Jim Grayway.
You can get a close-up look at each one of the photos by going to the website listed on the screen, okmorephotos.com/back-to-the-past. Now to the battles of sports, and one with a history in Kansas that, well, might surprise you. Anthony Powell gives us a look.
Be honest. Did you ever really think about Hayesville being home to one of the oldest polo clubs in the United States?
We have a lot of history here.
Fairfield Polo Association President Mike Carney says polo first came to the U.S. in 1895. He adds Kansas's wide open pastures and countless horses made the state perfect for the sport. Polo emerged in Wichita around 1925, with the wide open fields of Hayesville paving the way for Fairfield's formation in 1931.
We had an actor come out from LA one time to play in a charity game, and when he saw Kansas, he goes, I just imagine polo fields. I just imagine polo fields. He saw so much flat land. You know, you could put a polo field here, you could put a polo field there. And
as we found out, polo is grueling. The field is 300 yards long and 160 yards wide.
I love how physical it is. I'm really competitive and I really enjoy the physical aspects of the sport because you have to bump and you have to get your body into the play. It's kind of like hockey like that. Plus, I also just love the connection with horses.
Manhattan Kansan Rayanne McGill is part of a growing number of women who play polo. In fact, women now make up about half of all polo players in America. Rayanne loves competing against the men.
Everyone's really welcoming and inclusive, but it's because it's a co-ed sport, maybe you can get a bit of intimidation, but you just go out there and play better than them and then they learn real quick that they need to respect you.
On and off the field, they take their polo seriously here at Fairfield. There's even an announcing team. But for spectators, it's more of a time to relax, get outside, and enjoy some fresh air.
I mean, you're basically in a park setting and, come out and have a drink and enjoy the action and get to know the players.
Chances are, if you're not a player or directly involved with polo in some other fashion, you don't have a clue about this game. We spoke to one gentleman who didn't know anything about it. Then he paid a visit here. Now he feels like he's really into it. Oxford, Kansas resident Kevin Rule says he had driven by the polo fields for years and finally decided to take his family to a match.
Oh yeah, it's awesome how fast they're riding the horses trying to hit the ball. It's probably harder than you think. They're missing the ball. That's hard, but the horses are awesome. It's great atmosphere. People are out. Everybody's nice. You can tailgate. It's been pretty fun.
So you learn something new all the time. Polo in Kansas. Who would have thought? And while it likely won't ever be as popular as the more well-known sports, once you check it out, polo might just hook you.
Oh yeah, we'll be back.
In Hayesville, I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
Matches are played at Fairfield each May through September. Now to Mike Blair in tonight's Kansas Wild Edge, where flying ducks are poetry in motion.
My favorite photo subject has always been ducks. Late winter finds the birds dressed in best breeding colors, and courtship flights show off their best aerial moves. Flying ducks define poetry in motion, a combination of power and acrobatic skill. All bird flight is wondrous to watch, but I'm spellbound at the choreography of duck squadrons when they come and go. The dabblers, boisterous and brightly colored, are more common and easiest to watch. But the divers bring breathtaking displays with their greater speed and daring approaches. They carve the wind to defy G-forces, leaning into blistering turns that end in sudden splashdowns. And they drag their paddles as well as wings to burn the air and slow for landing. It's a race car scene where tight packs hold their breaths as drivers twist and turn in close quarters. And you can sense a joy in the speed as flyers play the wind in their descents. The thrill extends to all who watch. Yes, I'm there in spring migration for another fix of this special beauty. It's as close as I can come to the buzz of rushing air. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Next time, Mike captures the graceful aerobatic skills of some larger feathered aviators as they glide across the state. The year is 1929. America's thrown into the Great Depression. Anthony Powell shows us how an oil boom helped Valley Center thrive and set the stage for a thriving future.
For decades, Valley Center has been a thriving little community. But to understand its prosperity, you need to travel back in time and see how VC overcame adversity and capitalized on good fortune. First, the tough times.
And we've had, like I say, fires for about 6 years, from 1911 to 1916, really wrecked Valley Center. So we lost about 10 big businesses and a lot of two-story buildings and one church.
But Hobson says during this period, there was an oil boom going on in many parts of Kansas, including towns like El Dorado and Augusta. Valley Center would soon get its turn.
In the early 1920s, they discovered oil sand up here in Valley Center, which led them to believe, yes, there's definitely oil around.
And in 1928, black gold exploded from the town soil. 100 wells were built, some even remain today. But it was oil company workers that really helped Valley Center get through the Great Depression.
Valley Center survived and did very well during the Depression years because of the oil maintenance people here that kept all these wells operating. They got regular paychecks. And that's what kept Valley Center really going, because at one time, people were amazed to find out Valley Center had 6 sit-down restaurants in town.
Numerous other businesses thrived as well. Meanwhile, the Valley Center boom greatly benefited many other parts of Sedgwick County.
But with the right #1 well, it boomed Sedgwick County. In Sedgwick County, they were signing up leases all over Sedgwick County.
The Valley Center oil boom is chronicled at the Historical Museum by an exhibit created in 2019 by some WSU history students whose teacher, Dee Harris, is a VC native.
So what they did, went in and researched, and they researched some National Archives and things, and they got a lot of pictures. They made pictures for us, copies of pictures.
Meanwhile, it was at the museum that we found out there's a bit of an ironic twist when it comes to the way the oil boom has, in a few cases, affected the city's current growth. The oil boom of the 1920s has actually caused delays with some modern-day Valley Center development. This Casey's behind me off Meridian Street was in the middle of being constructed back in 2014 when a massive anchor from an oil derrick was found underground on the property.
And we've run into a number of buried pipelines in the development of the city and development of housing areas. And then you have to stop the whole process of the development, and then you have to go through and find out, are those wells active, are those pipelines flowing?
In most cases, like at Casey's, remnants can be removed and construction can continue. In some parts of the city, though, building is impossible because of active wells and lines. A small price to pay, though, when you realize the vital role the oil boom played in helping Valley Center survive and thrive. I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
During the oil boom, Valley Center had several grocery stores, filling stations, a large hotel, and a lot of retail shops. Every spring, Kansans head for the woods on a hunt that often brings great frustration. However, it can also bring great rewards. Jim Grayway has the story from Morris County.
The hunt is on for one of Mother Nature's most mysterious creatures. You may not realize it, but the mushroom is more animal than plant. And the morel is among the most elusive and delicious.
40 years ago, when we were in college up here in Emporia State, we went over to Redmond Dam. I found 2 grocery sacks full of them. Haven't found any since.
The hope of finding some brought out a large crowd to Council Grove Lake. What about this appeals to you?
Oh, it's just the taste of the mushrooms and the joy of getting out in the woods and hunting for them.
This was a chance for budding mushroomers to be guided by the master. Tom Weipert is also known as the Mushroom King.
There's no reason with what I see there shouldn't be a morel somewhere.
The window of time is short. Morel season typically lasts only about 3 weeks each spring. And it is something a lot of Kansans don't know much about, including Ken Meyer of Wichita.
Well, I like mushrooms that you buy at the store, and put them on your steak or whatever, but I've never really ate morels.
Mushroom hunting is certainly a bigger deal in some areas than it is in others, but the truth is, morels exist all across Kansas. They're literally popping up all around us. It's really just a matter of heading out into the woods and knowing where to look.
And when I see blooms on the trees, I see plenty of green. The main trees that you find them this early on especially would be a cottonwood that's blown down, like we find them on the root balls. For some reason, blowdowns go earlier than other trees, or snap-offs. So if you see a cottonwood that might be snapped off or blown down, fresh blown down, that's going to be our best chance.
Weipert makes a living hunting morels across the middle and western U.S. because they emerge for such a short time and because scientists have never figured out how to cultivate them in large numbers. They command a high price on the retail market.
Morels are symbiotic. They live with trees. So they do a life cycle with a tree. They attach to the tree's roots and they give it nutrients like copper, magnesium, and phosphorus in exchange for sugar. So when that tree gets dead or damaged, that's what triggers the morel to say, I need to reproduce. I need to kick a mushroom up, spread my spore out, grow my roots out, bring in more nutrients, or find a new home. As far as those trees' roots grow out, which I'm saying, there could be morels this far out into the grass.
But as hard as everybody looked, it turned out this hunt was just a little too early.
And today I didn't find any mushrooms, but I picked up some trash.
Then a few days later, morels started popping up in Kansas. Here are just a few photos from across the state. And it turns out finding them is only part of the fun. The real payoff comes when you slice and fry them up.
8 to 10 minutes in the skillet, you can see they're golden brown and they're done and ready to eat. So we're gonna. They're hot, but they're so good.
One of the many other ways to eat them is in your scrambled eggs. Morels are a delicacy prized by the best gourmet chefs in France, and also by any average Joe or Jane six-pack from Kansas if they know what to do and are up for the hunt. Near Council Grove, I'm Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
In order to sell morel mushrooms in Kansas, you must be certified by the State Department of Agriculture. Well, that's a wrap for this week. PositivelyKansas@kpts.org is our email address. I'm Sierra Scott. See you next time.